Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I was 21 when it happened, during my junior year of college. Looking back now, I can't believe how naive I was, how careless with my own safety. But back then, I was broke, restless, and a little too sure of myself. Winter break was coming up and I didn't want to waste money on flights. My family lived almost across the country, 1,300 miles away. But I thought it would be an adventure to drive the whole way in my old silver Honda Accord. It wasn't the kind of car anyone would admire. Dents from parking lot mishaps, paint fading on the roof, a headlight slightly fogged. But it got me around campus and to my part-time job at the library. I'd changed the oil myself before leaving, topped off all the fluids, and thought I'd be fine. Hotels weren't in the budget, so I packed 2 blankets and a pillow from my dorm, telling myself I'd just sleep at rest stops or parking lots whenever I got too tired. The first day went fine. I left at dawn, drove through state after state with music blasting, and texted my mom updates every few hours. She begged me to be safe, to at least consider stopping at motels, but I promised I'd be careful. I even joked, I'll just sleep in a Wendy's parking lot if I need to. Free smells of fries all night. She didn't laugh. By the time midnight rolled around, I was still going. I'd been on the road nearly 11 hours straight. My eyes burned, and every time I blinked, it felt like they stayed closed a fraction too long. That was when I realized I needed to pull over before I crashed. I spotted one of those roadside signs that promised food and gas at the next exit. Among the logos, the big red Wendys sign stood out. It was like a little beacon saying, "Hey, here's somewhere safe." So I pulled off. The Wendys was in a small town called Brentwood Junction. It wasn't much, just one main street with a couple gas stations, a Dollar General, and this Wendy's sitting at the corner near the highway ramp. The parking lot was half empty, lit by yellow street lamps that buzzed faintly. The inside was open late, at least according to the glowing open sign in the window, though it looked like only one car was in the drive-thru. I figured this was as good a place as any to sleep. I'd use the bathroom, maybe grab a soda, then recline in my car and crash for a few hours. Inside, the place smelled like fryer grease and cheap mop water. The floor was shiny but sticky under my sneakers. Behind the counter, a tired-looking kid with stringy hair and a faded name tag that read Derek asked, "What can I get you?" Just a small Coke. And, is the bathroom open?" He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, just don't break the soap dispenser again." I frowned. Wasn't me. He gave me a deadpan look like he didn't care either way. The bathroom was about what you'd expect for a highway Wendy's at 1 in the morning. Not disgusting, but not pleasant either. Cracked tiles, flickering fluorescent light, and the faint smell of urine no matter how much cleaning product they dumped in there. I washed my face with cold water to wake myself up, staring at the bags under my eyes in the mirror. When I walked back out, Coke in hand, I noticed something. A man was standing outside near my car. At first, I thought he was just passing through, maybe waiting for someone inside. But then I realized he was pressed right up to the driver's side window, cupping his hands to peer in. My heart thudded. I pushed open the Wendy's door and called out, "Can I help you?" The man jerked like I'd caught him doing something wrong. He turned around quickly, forcing a smile. He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, with a patchy beard and a cheap black hoodie pulled tight. "Oh, hey. Sorry, didn't mean to spook you, just, thought maybe someone was in there. Wanted to ask for some change for the vending machine." "The vending machine?" I repeated, glancing around. There wasn't a vending machine anywhere near the parking lot. "Yeah," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Over at the gas station across the street." I shook my head. "Sorry, man. I don't have cash." He shrugged. That's cool." That's cool, but he didn't leave. He just lingered there, looking at me with this uncomfortable half-smile. I walked around him, unlocked my car, and slid inside. "I'm really tired. Gonna try to get some sleep." Right, right, he said, backing away with his hands up like he didn't want trouble. Then he turned and strolled toward a dark green sedan parked near the back of the lot. I exhaled, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe he really was just some guy looking for a buck. Still, something about the way he'd been staring into my car made me want to leave, but I was too exhausted. My body begged for sleep. So I reclined my seat, pulled the blanket over myself, and closed my eyes. It couldn't have been more than 10 minutes before I noticed it. Lights, moving outside my car. My eyes fluttered open, heart instantly racing. In the rearview mirror, I saw headlights pulling up behind me. Close, too close. It was that same dark green sedan. I sat upright. Oh, hell no. I started the engine and put the car in drive. As I pulled out of the lot, I muttered curses under my breath. The guy was weird, sure, but maybe I was overreacting. Maybe he just wanted to park near the restaurant entrance. But I couldn't risk it. Back on the highway, I told myself I'd just push on until I found another place. But the exhaustion hit me like a wall. My eyelids sagged and the white lines blurred together. Twice I jolted awake after drifting for a second, my heart pounding. It wasn't safe. I had to stop. About 40 minutes later, I saw another sign for food and restrooms. I pulled off, following the exit to what looked like another Wendy's, or at least what used to be one. This Wendy's was closed down, boarded up with plywood and covered in graffiti. The parking lot was cracked, weeds pushing through the asphalt. One of the light poles leaned at an angle, flickering weakly. The red letters on the sign had faded to a ghostly pink, but the lot was empty. Quiet, perfect for sleeping. I parked near the side of the building, far from the road. The silence felt almost peaceful compared to the buzz of the last place. I reclined my seat again, wrapped up in my blanket, and finally mercifully let myself drift off. I don't know how long I was out before the crash came. A deafening bang against my car shook me awake. My body lurched forward and I sat up in terror. What the? Another smash. Glass shattered. My back window exploded inward, shards sprinkling across the seat. I whipped my head around and froze. The man from before, the one from the first Wendy's, was standing right there, a metal baseball bat in his hands. His grin was twisted, eyes wide with a sick kind of joy. He swung again, slamming into the side of my car. Dents caved in. He shouted one word over and over, "Liar! Liar! Liar!" I fumbled desperately for my keys, which had fallen between the seats. "What the fuck, man? What are you doing?" He slammed the passenger window, cracked spider webbing across it. "Liar!" he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "I don't even know you," I yelled, finally jamming the key into the ignition. My hands shook so violently I could barely turn it. The engine roared to life and I floored it. The tires squealed, throwing gravel. The man lunged forward, smashing the bat into my rear taillight as I sped out of the lot. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. I called 911 with trembling hands. There's a guy. He just attacked my car. He's chasing me, I think. He smashed my windows, please." The dispatcher tried to calm me down, asked where I was. I gave her the cross streets, my voice cracking. She told me to head toward the nearest gas station where officers would meet me. I don't even remember the drive there. It was all adrenaline and panic. When I finally pulled into the fluorescent safety of a 24-hour Shell station, I jumped out of my car, shaking so badly I could barely stand. The damage was worse than I realized. 2 windows shattered, deep dents along the side, and when I crouched to look, one tire nearly flat, slashed. I must have been seconds away from losing control on the highway. 2 officers arrived within minutes. One stayed with me, taking notes as I stammered through the story. The other drove back toward the abandoned Wendy's to search. But the man and his green sedan were already gone. They put out an alert. No matches. I was stranded in Brentwood Junction for 3 days waiting for repairs. My mind looping the same thoughts over and over. Why me? Why liar? Why follow me from one place to another? No answers ever came. To this day, whenever I see a Wendy's late at night, my stomach knots. I can't look at one without remembering his face at my window, that deranged smile, the sound of glass shattering. All over what? A few dollars? A chance conversation? Or maybe just because I was there at the wrong time in the wrong place? I still don't know. But I do know this. If you ever think about sleeping in a fast food parking lot on a lonely highway, don't. Spend the money. Find a motel. Anything is safer than what I went through. Because I truly believe if my car hadn't started that night, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. I never thought something as ordinary as a fast food stop could end up being one of the scariest experiences of my life. Looking back, I guess it makes sense. I was young, careless, and thought bad things only happened to other people. This was in late 2018. I had just left a job I hated in Dayton, Ohio, and was in that strange limbo period between work. My dad's 50th birthday was coming up, and my family in Minnesota was planning a surprise party. Flights were way too expensive for me, especially with no steady paycheck. Gas was cheap enough that I figured I could make the drive instead. It wasn't my first road trip, but it was the longest one I'd done alone. To play it safe, I stretched it across 3 days. Day 1 through Indiana and Illinois, Day 2 across Wisconsin, and Day 3 the shorter final leg up into Minnesota. I figured that way I wouldn't kill myself trying to do 12 hours of highway in one day. Day 1 went smoothly. I stayed overnight at a no-name motel outside Peoria. I slept late the next morning, which turned out to be a mistake. I opened my motel door close to 11 a.m., groggy, only to nearly bump into a man standing right outside. Excuse me," I muttered, trying to squeeze past. He didn't move right away. He just stood there, staring at me with these heavy, sagging eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. Mid-40s, maybe. Thinning brown hair, skin a little gray. His presence was unsettling in a way I couldn't put into words. Finally, he stepped back. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said flatly. "It's fine," I replied, brushing past with my duffel bag. I hauled my stuff into the trunk of my Civic, aware the whole time that he was still standing there, just watching. I tried to shake it off. Creepy or not, I wasn't staying. I checked out, got on the highway, and promised myself I'd make up time. The drive that day dragged. I wanted 10 hours minimum, maybe 11. The first few hours were fine, plenty of towns and rest areas. But by late afternoon, the landscape stretched into long rural highways, endless fields broken up only by the occasional gas station. Around hour 6, I pulled into a station to fill up and grab coffee. While the pump ran, I ducked inside for a large black coffee. When I came back, something made my stomach tighten. A car had pulled in, an older deep red Corolla. It parked nose to nose with mine, so close it looked like the bumper might be kissing mine. The windshield was tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. No one got out. The pump stayed empty, just sitting there. I tried to ignore the prickling at the back of my neck. I finished filling up, slid into my Civic, and drove off. In my rear view, I caught sight of the Corolla pulling out too. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. They were just heading the same way. Cars shared highways all the time. For the next couple hours, it hung back, 5 or 6 cars behind. Sometimes I lost sight of it altogether in clusters of headlights. By the time the sun set, I'd nearly forgotten about it. But as the road thinned, as cars disappeared, that red Corolla returned. Always behind me. Not close enough to spook me into pulling over, but never far enough to dismiss either. I kept driving. My coffee had long worn off. My eyelids grew heavier. By midnight, I was fighting to keep my head up. I told myself I'd power through another 2 hours to reach Madison, crash in a nicer hotel there. But by 12:30, I knew I couldn't. The next exit advertised gas and food. That was enough for me. I pulled off, grateful for any kind of stop. The gas station was small, run down. The convenience store closed for the night. I cursed under my breath, but figured I'd top off the tank anyway. The lot was empty, lights buzzing overhead. Beyond the glow, everything was just black cornfields. As I pumped, headlights appeared on the exit ramp. A car peeled off the highway fast. My chest tightened when I recognized the shape, the same deep red Corolla. They didn't pull up to a pump. Instead, they rolled right next to my driver's side, stopping just feet away. My heart thudded. I yanked the nozzle out, shoved it back onto the pump, and darted into my car. Just as I locked the doors, the Corolla's passenger side opened. A man stepped out. My stomach dropped. It was the same man from the motel, same sagging eyes, same hollow face. He tried my door handle immediately, tugging at it like he had every right to get in. When it didn't budge, he crouched slightly, peering at me through the glass. For a split second, we just locked eyes. His were wide, alive in a way they hadn't been earlier that morning. And then his mouth curled into a grin, too wide, too eager, not angry, not frustrated, like this was fun. I started the engine and floored it. Gravel spat from under my tires as I swerved past the pumps back toward the ramp. In the mirror, I saw him standing there, still grinning, as if amused I'd gotten away. I didn't stop again until Madison. I booked the first hotel I found, parked under a light, and double-checked the locks. I sat in the room for almost an hour with the curtains drawn tight, heart still racing. What terrified me most wasn't just that he'd followed me for 10 hours. It wasn't just that he'd tried my door. It was that he hadn't been driving. Someone else had been in that car the whole time. Someone I never saw. Someone who didn't get out. Which meant whatever they had planned, there were two of them. The rest of the trip passed in a blur. I made it to Minnesota. I hugged my dad. We celebrated his birthday and I pretended everything was fine. But sometimes, especially when I'm back on long highways, I think about that red Corolla. About the grinning man with the sleepless eyes. And I wonder how many exits they followed me past before deciding to make their move. I've never road tripped alone again. And whenever I pass a Wendy's late at night glowing under buzzing lights by some lonely stretch of road, I remember the feeling of sitting in that parking lot with someone's eyes watching me through the glass. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know what would have happened if my door hadn't been locked. And I don't ever want to find out. I never thought a fast food stop could end up being the most terrifying memory of my life. Looking back now, I realize that what happened to me on that road trip in 2018 could have easily ended with me disappearing, never to be heard from again. At the time, I was 26 and in a weird spot in my life. I had just quit a job that had been draining me for years, long hours in a warehouse where management cared more about numbers than people. I'd been planning to take some time off before hunting for my next job. My dad's 50th birthday was coming up and my family had arranged a big surprise party in our hometown of Raleigh, North Carolina. Since I was living out in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the time, I had two options: fly or drive. Flights were ridiculous that week, close to $500 for a round trip. Meanwhile, gas was still decently cheap back then. I figured if I had the time, why not drive? It would save money, give me a chance to clear my head, and let me feel like I was taking control of my life again instead of just waiting for something to happen. So I mapped out a 3-day drive. One long day, one really long day, and a final shorter stretch to make it in time for the party. I was never much of a road trip guy, though. The idea of being on open roads for hours and hours kind of unnerved me, if I'm honest. But I kept reminding myself, this is simple. Just drive, eat, sleep, repeat. That was the plan. My first day went smoothly enough. About 10 hours behind the wheel, stopping for gas and bathroom breaks whenever I needed to. I crashed at a small motel in Little Rock, Arkansas. It wasn't a dump, but definitely not the kind of place I'd want to stay 2 nights in. The carpet was sticky. The AC rattled like a dying lawnmower, and the bedspread had that stale smell of hundreds of other travelers who'd passed through. I didn't care. I just needed sleep. The next morning I overslept, woke up around 11 a.m. I was still groggy when I opened the door to head out, and that's when I almost walked right into a man standing directly outside my room. Excuse me, I muttered, shifting my duffel bag over my shoulder and trying to step past him. The guy didn't move. He just stood there, blocking part of the doorway, his eyes heavy with bags under them. He looked mid-40s, tall, with thinning hair and a face that didn't exactly invite conversation. I forced a half smile, slid by him, and carried my stuff to the car. What unsettled me was that he didn't follow, didn't head toward another room. He just stayed there, standing by the door I'd come out of, watching me load my trunk. I avoided eye contact, quickly shoved the rest of my things in, and got into my car. The moment I started it up and pulled away, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Weird dude, I muttered to myself. I figured that was that. A random, uncomfortable encounter. I had no idea how wrong I was. That second day of driving was meant to be the hardest, at least 12 hours on the road to cover most of the distance before reaching North Carolina. The first 6 hours weren't too bad. Lots of passing through towns, some traffic, plenty of billboards and gas stations along the way. But as the afternoon turned to evening, the stretches of open road got longer, emptier, and lonelier. About 5 or 6 hours in, I decided to fill up before the rural highways swallowed me for the night. I pulled into a decent-looking gas station, topped off my tank, and walked inside to grab a coffee. When I came back out, I froze. A deep red, older model Toyota Corolla was parked unusually close to my car, front bumper almost touching my back bumper. The windows were tinted dark, so I couldn't see who was inside, but something about the positioning felt deliberate. Nobody got out. Nobody pumped gas. I tried to ignore it. Slipped into my driver's seat, started the car, and eased out of the station. As I merged back onto the highway, I caught sight of the Corolla pulling out right after me. Coincidence, I whispered. Just a coincidence. For the next hour or two, I saw them occasionally, a few cars behind me, but I tried not to obsess over it. It was only when traffic thinned and night fell that I realized the car was no longer visible. Relief washed over me. Maybe I'd just been paranoid. But paranoia has a way of planting itself in your gut, and once it's there, it doesn't leave easily. By around 9 p.m., I was dead tired. My eyelids kept drooping, and I knew I needed something, anything, to stay awake for the last 2 hours. That's when I saw a Wendy's glowing red in the distance near an off-ramp. Perfect, I muttered, signaling off the highway. The place was almost empty. Just a couple of cars in the lot and one teenager wiping tables inside. I parked, stretched my aching legs, and went in. The kid at the counter, his name tag reading Trevor, gave me a rehearsed smile. Evening, what can I get you? Large coffee, black, and one spicy chicken sandwich. As I waited, I checked my phone. No new texts, no missed calls. Just the glow of the screen reflecting my tired face. I was zoning out when the door opened behind me. The sound of shoes scuffing against tile made me turn. It was him, the man from the motel. He stood there like he'd been waiting for me to notice. Those same dark, sunken eyes locked on mine, and my stomach dropped. Trevor, oblivious, called out, "Coffee's brewing, might be a couple minutes." I forced myself to look away from the man and nodded to Trevor. That's fine. But inside, my pulse was pounding. I could feel the man's stare like a weight on the back of my neck. He didn't order. He didn't move. He just stood inside the Wendys watching me. I turned back to Trevor and lowered my voice. "Hey, can you maybe hurry that coffee up?" The kid gave me a weird look but shrugged. "Yeah, sure, man." When I glanced back toward the door again, the man was gone. My chest tightened. He hadn't walked past me. I hadn't heard the door open again, but he wasn't there. Trevor handed me the sandwich and coffee. I practically snatched it from him. "Thanks," I muttered, heading out quickly. The parking lot looked empty except for my car, and the same deep red Corolla parked a few spaces away. I froze mid-step. Someone was inside it. This time I could see movement through the windshield. I didn't think. I just walked fast to my car, got in, and locked the doors. My hands shook as I fumbled with the ignition. The Corolla didn't move as I pulled out. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence again. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. About an hour later, I was back on the empty highway. My coffee was long gone, but I was still wide awake. Adrenaline had taken care of that. The city was still another hour away, but I spotted a small exit with a 24-hour gas station. I figured I'd top off again just in case. The place was eerie, just a handful of flickering lights above the pumps and a convenience store that looked closed. Not a soul around. As I started pumping gas, headlights appeared on the horizon. My heart sank. A single car turned down the exit ramp toward me. Even before it got close, I knew. The deep red Corolla. It didn't even slow at the pumps. It pulled up fast, screeching to a stop right beside my driver's door. The passenger door flew open. The man from the motel jumped out, running straight for me, his hand reaching for my handle. I slammed my door shut, locked it, and turned the key in one motion. My engine roared to life as he yanked at the handle. For a split second, our eyes met through the glass. His face twisted, not with anger, but with a wide, chilling grin. Like this was a game to him. I floored it. The pump ripped free from my tank as I tore out of the lot and back onto the highway. My heart hammered as I checked the mirrors. The Corolla's headlights lingered on the ramp, but didn't follow. I didn't stop again until I reached the city lights. Only then did I let myself breathe. I didn't see the car again that night or the next day as I finished the last stretch to Raleigh. But the thought that haunted me, the one I can never shake even now, is this. When that man tried to get into my car at the gas station, he got out from the passenger seat. That meant someone else was driving him, which means it wasn't just some random stalker, it was two people, working together, following me for over 10 hours. And the scariest part? They could have been following me from the very first motel without me even knowing. I never drive long trips alone anymore. And to this day, every time I pass a Wendy's glowing red on the side of a highway, my stomach knots up. Because I know if I'd hesitated even for a second that night, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. I never thought a late-night craving and a wrong turn would be something that stuck with me for the rest of my life. But looking back now, I can't forget the way it felt. How my chest tightened. How the silence around me seemed alive. How I realized that sometimes the scariest things don't come from legends or ghost stories, but from real people on real roads. I was 26 at the time, living in a small town in Missouri. I'd been working at a warehouse job for almost 4 years, and honestly, I felt like I was wasting away there. Every day was the same. Steel beams, forklifts, loading bays, the smell of oil and dust clinging to my clothes. I wanted out. Around that time, my friend Mason had moved out to Reno, Nevada to work as a mechanic. He'd always been a kind of free spirit, the type to pack up and leave when things got boring. We'd been close since high school, but distance had turned our conversations into the occasional text or call. Then one evening he called me while I was eating a microwave dinner in my tiny apartment. "Bro, you've got to come visit," Mason said through the crackle of his Bluetooth headset. "There's so much out here. Mountains, casinos, food spots. You'd love it. I'll show you around. You can crash at my place." I laughed, half amused. "Man, I don't know. That's like, 18 hours? Closer to 20, depending on stops, but come on, dude, you never go anywhere. You work, you sleep, you sit at home. Just take a week off. Drive out here. It'll be an adventure." The more he talked, the more it stuck in my head. I had vacation time saved up, I had money. And more than anything, I needed to break out of the rut. So I told my supervisor I'd be gone for a week, packed up some clothes, snacks, and a duffel bag, and set out on the trip. I didn't mind driving. Actually, I liked the solitude. Hours of open road, music blasting, no one to bother me. On the first day, I started at sunrise and just kept going. I stopped only for gas, fast food, and the occasional bathroom break. I ate junk, listened to podcasts, and rolled the windows down when I got tired. By the time the sky was dark, I had crossed Kansas and was somewhere in the middle of Colorado. I'd booked a cheap hotel room online in advance. It wasn't a chain, just some independent place in a small town about 30 minutes off the highway. The plan was simple: get there, crash, and leave first thing in the morning. But that night didn't go according to plan. It was about 10:15 p.m. when I realized how hungry I was again. I'd been running on trail mix and a gas station sandwich for the last 6 hours. I didn't want another bag of chips. I wanted real food, something hot. I passed a blue sign on the highway that listed food options at the next exit: McDonald's, Arby's, and Wendy's. For some reason, Wendy's called to me. Maybe it was because I hadn't had it in years. Maybe it was because the idea of a bacon cheeseburger and fries sounded perfect. So I took the exit. The Wendy's wasn't far from the ramp, just down a quiet stretch of road with a couple of other businesses. An old gas station, a darkened thrift store, and a closed-up diner. The lot was dim, lit mostly by the glow of the Wendy's sign and the buzzing streetlight over the drive-thru. I parked my car near the entrance. Inside, I could see there were only 2 workers, a young woman in a headset by the counter, and an older guy in the back flipping burgers. The place was otherwise empty. I grabbed my wallet, stepped inside, and was immediately hit by the smell of fried food and that slightly greasy fast food air. The girl at the counter gave me a tired but polite smile. "Hi, welcome to Wendy's. What can I get for you tonight?" Her name tag read Amber. Yeah, can I get a number 6 with a Coke?" I said. My voice sounded rough from all the driving. "Sure thing." She tapped at the register. "For here or to go?" "To go. I've still got some driving to do." She nodded and repeated my order, then gave me the total. As I handed over the cash, she glanced at me. "You traveling?" "Yeah, heading to Reno." "Long way from home," I said. "Nice," she said, like she almost envied it. "Wish I could just hit the road like that." We chatted for a minute, nothing deep, just the kind of small talk that fills silence. Then I stepped aside to wait for my food. As I leaned against the counter, I noticed something. Through the big glass windows, there was a car parked across the street in the lot of the closed diner. A dark sedan, headlights off. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I realized I could see the faint glow of someone sitting in the driver's seat. I told myself it wasn't my business. Maybe someone was waiting for a friend. Maybe they were on their phone. But for some reason, the sight stuck in my head. Amber slid the bag of food across the counter with a smile. "Here you go. Drive safe, okay?" "Thanks," I said, and forced a smile back. Back in my car, I unwrapped the burger and took a huge bite before even pulling out of the lot. I hadn't realized how hungry I was. I washed it down with Coke, then started the engine. My phone buzzed. It was at 4% battery. I'd meant to buy a new charger, but I kept putting it off. My old one barely worked anymore. "Just make it to the hotel," I muttered to myself. I pulled out of the lot and headed down the road, planning to get back to the highway. But after a couple of minutes, I realized I'd taken the wrong turn. Instead of merging toward the interstate, I was on some long, dark 2-lane road cutting through fields and tree lines. I figured I could turn around eventually, but then I noticed something in my rearview mirror. Headlights. A car had turned onto the road not long after me. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but as I drove, the car stayed right behind me, never passing, never falling far back. I tapped my brakes lightly, testing. The car tapped theirs too. My stomach dropped. I tried to play it cool at first. Maybe they were just going the same way. Maybe I was being paranoid. But the longer it went on, the more it felt wrong. The road was empty. No houses, no other cars, no businesses. Just me, the dark pavement, and the glow of their headlights pressing into my mirrors. After about a mile, I turned onto another road. The car followed. I took another random turn. The car followed again. "Okay," I whispered, gripping the wheel tighter. "This isn't right." I checked my phone. Dead. The last percent had drained while it sat idle. I cursed under my breath. I pressed harder on the gas, trying to put some distance between us. The car behind me did the same. Then up ahead, I saw a narrow shoulder where I could maybe pull a U-turn. My pulse hammered in my ears. I slowed down, flicked my signal, and started to swing the wheel. But the moment I began to turn, the car behind me swerved too, blocking the road, stopping sideways across the lane. I slammed on my brakes, heart racing. The driver's door of the sedan opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie. He didn't walk. He jogged straight toward my car. "Shit, shit, shit!" I yelled, fumbling for the gear shift. Instinct took over. I jerked the wheel to the right, flooring the gas. My car shot off the pavement, bouncing over the grass shoulder. For a second, I thought I'd get stuck, but the tires caught, and I sped forward, cutting around his car by inches. In my mirror, I saw the man spin around, sprinting back toward his sedan. I didn't think. I just drove. My hands were slippery with sweat, my chest tight, my eyes scanning every shadow. I took the next turn I saw, then another. The roads twisted deeper into wooded areas, darker and darker. At one point, I killed my headlights and pulled over, holding my breath as I sat in the silence. Minutes ticked by. Then faint in the distance, I heard an engine, a low hum growing louder. I turned the key and bolted again, weaving down unfamiliar streets, praying I could find the highway. Finally, by some miracle, I spotted a green sign, Interstate 70, entrance ramp. Relief washed over me like a wave. I floored it, merging back onto the safety of the lit interstate surrounded by other cars. Only then did I let myself breathe again. I drove straight to a gas station, bought a new phone charger, and plugged it in. The screen lit up, and I finally pulled up directions to my hotel. When I parked in the lot of that small two-story inn, I sat there for a long time before going in. My hands still shook on the steering wheel. I never figured out who that man was or why he tried to block me in. I don't know if it was some twisted robbery attempt or something worse. I never reported it. I couldn't even remember exactly where I'd been when it happened, just a blur of back roads and panic. But I'll never forget the way he looked as he jogged toward me, confident like he'd done this before. And every time I see a Wendy's sign late at night glowing red against the dark, I think about that night, about how a burger stop almost turned into the last mistake I ever made. Because the scariest part, nobody would have known where I was. Nobody would have found me. I never thought a simple stop at Wendy's would stick with me the way it has. At the time, I was just another college kid trying to juggle classes, a part-time job, and whatever scraps of social life I could fit in between. My name's Ethan Miles, and back then, in the fall of 2013, I was 20 years old, living off campus in a rundown apartment complex on the edge of Redwood City, Ohio. My school didn't offer dorms, and even if they had, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. Money was always tight. I worked at the local grocery store stocking shelves overnight, which meant my sleep schedule was a mess. Most mornings, I'd stumble out of work around 6:30, catch a shower in my apartment, and then head straight to my 8 o'clock lecture on American history. And in between, almost every morning, I stopped at the Wendys off Lakehurst Avenue. The Wendys wasn't anything special. Same neon red sign buzzing against the dull morning sky. Same mix of tired workers and locals who didn't want to cook breakfast. But for me, it was routine. Coffee, a breakfast sandwich, maybe some fries. Just enough to hold me over until after class. That routine is why I ended up there the morning everything changed. That day started out like any other. My shift at the grocery store had been brutal. A truck delivery came late, and I'd spent most of the night breaking down pallets, my back screaming. By the time I clocked out, my eyes felt like sandpaper. I drove my beat-up 1999 Toyota Camry down the half-empty streets, headlights cutting through the fog. I remember yawning so hard my jaw popped as I turned into the Wendy's parking lot. It was just before 7. The lot was half empty except for a couple of cars parked near the side. I pulled in close to the door, killed the engine, and sat for a second with my head against the steering wheel. I thought about skipping breakfast and going straight home. But then I imagined sitting in class, stomach growling, eyelids heavy, and I forced myself to get out. The air was cold enough to bite, that kind of damp Ohio cold that seeps into your bones. I shoved my hands in my hoodie pocket and headed inside. The place was quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that sterile glow. The smell of grease and coffee hung heavy in the air. At the counter, a woman in her 40s with a name tag that read Darla gave me a tired smile. "Morning, honey. What can I get you?" "The usual," I said, rubbing at my eyes. "Sausage biscuit, small fry, and coffee." Black Sheep punched it in without asking for details. By that point, I'd been in enough times that she knew. "That'll be $4.85. I handed her a crumpled 5. As she gave me change, I noticed the only other people inside were 2 men sitting at separate tables near the back. One was a construction worker, judging by the neon vest slung over his chair. He was nursing a coffee and scrolling through his phone. The other caught my attention immediately. He was an older man, maybe mid-60s, with wiry gray hair sticking out from under a dirty ball cap. His clothes looked slept in, wrinkled jeans and oversized flannel with stains down the front. He wasn't eating, just sitting there, hands folded neatly on the table, eyes locked straight ahead at nothing in particular. There was something about the way he sat, too still, like he was waiting for something. I shook it off, grabbed my tray when Darla set it down, and took a seat by the window. I'd barely taken a bite of my biscuit when I felt eyes on me. I glanced up, and sure enough, the old man was watching me. Not a casual glance either. His head was tilted slightly, his gaze fixed, unblinking. I looked down at my food, pretending not to notice, but when I glanced back, he was still staring. A few minutes later, he stood up. My chest tightened as he shuffled toward me, boots scuffing against the tile. "Morning," he said, voice gravelly. Morning," I replied cautiously. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you." The words made me freeze. Who says that? Why would he need to clarify that? I forced a laugh, trying to mask my unease. "Didn't think you were?" "You'd be surprised," he muttered. Then his gaze dropped to the floor. "You stepped on the grass outside." My brow furrowed. "What?" "When you got out of your car," he said, pointing a trembling finger toward the door. "You cut across the grass." "Shouldn't do that. You'll crush the bugs. Get your shoes dirty. Don't want that, do you?" A chill ran through me. I hadn't even realized I'd stepped on the grass, but maybe I had. "I'll keep that in mind," I said, trying to sound casual. He leaned closer, and I could smell his breath, sour, stale. "What's your name?" "Ethan." His smile widened. "Ethan, don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you." The way he repeated it sent another shiver down my spine. I gave him a tight nod and glanced toward Darla, hoping she'd intervene, but she was busy at the drive-through window. "Listen, I've got to eat before class," I said, my voice shaky. Before I could finish, he straightened and shuffled back to his table without another word, still smiling. I tried to shake it off, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I forced myself to finish my food quickly, glancing up every few seconds to see if he was watching me again. And he was. Every time. At one point, I looked down at my tray, blinked, and when I looked back up, he was standing in front of me again, like I'd missed him getting up entirely. "You stepped on the grass," he said, same tone, same words. I blinked hard. "What? You wouldn't want to step on the bugs, or get your shoes dirty." His eyes were wide now, his voice firmer. I swallowed. "Okay, I get it. What's your name?" Something inside me went cold. He'd already asked that. "Ethan." Before I finished, he cut me off. "Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you." My stomach twisted. It was like he was looping, repeating the same interaction word for word. Déjà vu so strong it made my skin crawl. This time, I didn't try to respond. I stood up quickly, dumped my tray, and headed for the door. The cold air hit me like a slap. I walked fast toward my car, heart racing. Behind me, I heard the squeak of the door opening. I glanced over my shoulder. The old man was standing in the doorway, just staring. I fumbled for my keys, climbed into the Camry, and locked the doors. When I looked back up, he was gone. I exhaled shakily, telling myself I was overreacting. Just some weird old guy. Nothing more. But as I pulled out of the lot and turned toward campus, something caught my eye. At the intersection up ahead, traffic was backed up. I slowed, stomach tightening when I saw why. A delivery truck had tipped onto its side in the middle of the road, blocking traffic. Police lights flashed. People were gathered on the sidewalk. I stared at the wreckage, my heart pounding, because in the chaos of twisted metal and shattered glass, I thought I saw him. The old man, standing near the wreck, smiling at me. For weeks, I avoided that Wendy's. Took longer routes to school just so I wouldn't drive past it, but it didn't stop. I'd catch glimpses of him at the edge of campus, by the grocery store parking lot, once even outside my apartment. Always watching, always with that faint smile. And sometimes when I was exhausted, half asleep, I'd hear it, his voice low and gravelly right behind me. "Don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you." The words that meant the exact opposite. It's been years since then. I moved states, finished school, built a different life. But sometimes when I cut across the grass or glance out my window late at night, I swear I see him. The same cap, the same flannel, the same stillness. And I hear the words like a whisper carried on the wind. "Ethan, don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you," but deep down I know he's still waiting. And one day he will. I was 16 back then, living in Brookdale, a small, forgettable town in Indiana. My family wasn't poor, but money was always tight. My mom worked as a cashier at a pharmacy, and my dad had been laid off from the auto plant. My older cousin Marcus used to joke that Wendy's was practically my second home because I was always there, either working or grabbing food after school. I didn't mind the job. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked having money of my own, and my manager Donna was usually laid back unless corporate was visiting. The Wendy's was on the edge of town near an abandoned strip mall. Across the street was a 24-hour gas station, but otherwise the place was pretty dead after dark. Our store closed at midnight, though the drive-thru technically stayed open till 1 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. I usually worked evenings, cleaning the fryers, wiping tables, mopping floors. It was boring work, but it was steady. I never thought of it as dangerous. That changed on one cold Friday night in late November. That evening had started like any other. I clocked in around 6. My coworker Jenny was at the register, and Marcus, my cousin, was on grill. We were joking around, tossing fries at each other when Donna snapped, "Enough! You two want to clean grease traps all night?" "Sorry, Donna," Marcus grinned, though I could see she wasn't entirely joking. Donna was one of those middle-aged managers who carried herself like she'd seen everything. She had this raspy voice from smoking too much and eyes that could cut through steel. Still, she cared about us in her own way. The rush came and went. By 10:30, the dining area was empty. The only sound was the hum of the soda machine and the fryer oil bubbling. Jenny was wiping tables, humming to herself. Marcus had already disappeared into the walk-in freezer to restock patties. I was mopping the back hallway near the supply closet when I heard something. A creak. At first, I thought it was just the building settling or maybe Marcus moving around in the freezer. But then I heard it again. This slow, deliberate sound like weight shifting on wood. The weird thing was, it came from above. I stopped, mop in hand, and looked up. There was an attic hatch above the hallway ceiling. I'd never given it much thought before. Donna kept it padlocked most of the time, but now I noticed it was slightly ajar, just an inch or two. My skin prickled. "Marcus?" I called out, half joking. "You trying to scare me?" No answer. I shrugged it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid, and went back to mopping. But as I pushed the mop bucket aside, I heard it again. This time, a faint scraping like nails dragging across wood. I froze. "Hey, did you hear that?" I whispered to Jenny when I walked back out front. She frowned. "Hear what?" "Something in the ceiling. Like footsteps or something." Jenny rolled her eyes. "Great. Another one of your ghost stories. Save it, I've got enough nightmares from closing shifts." I didn't argue. Jenny didn't scare easily, and I wasn't sure if I even believed what I'd heard. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time the kitchen went quiet, I thought I heard faint shifting sounds from above. At 11:15, Donna clapped her hands. All right, kids, let's hustle. Dining room's locked. Marcus, finish stocking. Jenny, cash drawer. Eli, that's me. Mop the bathrooms, then you're on trash duty. Got it, I muttered. The bathrooms were at the far end of the hallway, the same hallway with the attic hatch. As I pushed open the men's room door, my heart started racing. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. But when I came back out with my mop bucket, I swear I heard a thump above me. Okay, nope, I whispered. Not my imagination. It all happened so fast. As I looked up, I saw the attic hatch shift, just slightly, but enough for me to catch it. And then, a hand appeared. Pale, dirty fingers gripping the edge of the opening. I nearly dropped the mop. The hatch creaked wider, and before I could move, a man lowered himself halfway out. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken, hair greasy and wild. He wore a dirty hoodie and ripped jeans, and he was barefoot. Barefoot. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a second, neither of us moved. Holy shit, I gasped, stumbling backward. The man's lips curled into the faintest smile, and then he dropped down silently, landing in a crouch. Eli, Donna's voice called from the kitchen. Everything all right back there? I opened my mouth, but the man put a finger to his lips. Shh. That single sound chilled me to the bone. My brain screamed at me to run, but my body was frozen. Footsteps echoed down the hall, Marcus coming out of the freezer. The man slipped into the supply closet before Marcus turned the corner. Yo, you good? Marcus asked, squinting at me. You look like you saw a ghost. I swallowed hard. Yeah, just thought I heard something. For the next 40 minutes. I couldn't focus. Every time the fryer sizzled or a tray clattered, I jumped. I kept glancing at that hallway, half expecting the man to step out again. But he didn't. Jenny noticed my nerves and teased, "You seriously need to cut back on horror movies." But I wasn't imagining it. I knew what I saw. At midnight, we locked the doors. Only drive-through was open. A couple of drunk college kids came by, laughing too loud, ordering Frosties. Marcus muttered about how much he hated late-night shifts. Donna was counting receipts. Everything looked normal. But I couldn't stop replaying the man's face in my head. The hollow eyes, the dirt under his fingernails, that smile. Around 12:40, Donna sent Marcus out to take the trash. I stayed near the fryer, pretending to wipe down counters. Jenny was in the back grabbing more cups. That's when I heard it again. The supply closet door creaked open. I froze. Out stepped the man from the attic. He looked even taller now, his shoulders hunched, eyes darting. He carried something in his hand, a long, sharp screwdriver. "Don't scream," he whispered. My heart slammed in my chest. What do you want?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was some kind of puzzle. "Food, warmth, been here. Days. You won't tell, right?" Before I could respond, Jenny's voice echoed, "Eli, you got the mop bucket?" She appeared in the hallway, then froze when she saw him. Her eyes widened. "Who the hell?" The man lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. She yelped, trying to pull free. "Hey!" I shouted, grabbing the nearest thing, a metal tray, and swinging it at him. It clattered against his shoulder. He grunted and shoved Jenny aside. She fell hard, scrambling backward. "What's going on?" Donna's voice thundered as she stormed down the hall. She stopped dead when she saw the man. "Call the cops!" I screamed. Donna didn't hesitate. She bolted back toward the office. The man's eyes darted between me and Jenny, wild and frantic. Then he bolted for the kitchen door leading outside. It slammed shut behind him. The police came within minutes. Marcus had seen the guy run out and pointed them in the direction he went. They searched the area and eventually found him hiding behind the dumpster, shivering, screwdriver still in hand. Turned out he was a drifter who had been sneaking into the attic of our Wendys for nearly a week. He survived off leftover food, sometimes slipping down at night to steal supplies. When the cops led him out in cuffs, he looked right at me. That same faint smile stretched across his lips as if to say, "You'll remember me." And he was right. I still do. That night, Donna closed the store early. We all sat in the dining room, shaken. Jenny's hands wouldn't stop trembling. Marcus tried to play it off like it was nothing, but even he kept glancing at the ceiling hatch. Donna lit a cigarette outside, pacing back and forth, muttering, "Damn it, damn it." Me? I just sat there, numb, replaying it over and over. The sound of his bare feet on the tiles, the look in his eyes when he shushed me, the feel of that tray rattling in my hands. I thought Wendy's was just a boring fast food job. But after that night, I realized danger doesn't always look like dark alleys or masked strangers. Sometimes it's right above your head, waiting. I never thought working at a fast food place would leave me with a memory that keeps me awake at night. But here I am, years later, still replaying every sound, every footstep, every shadow of that night inside my head. Back in the fall of 2019, I was a freshman at Eastwood College, a small private school tucked in the middle of Indiana. The campus wasn't huge, more like a cluster of red brick buildings surrounded by flat farmland. When I got accepted, I thought I'd be thrilled to get away from home, but reality hit me hard. My parents didn't make much money, and scholarships only covered so much, so I had to pick up a job to keep myself afloat. I ended up working at the Wendys on Fairfield Road, about a 10-minute walk from campus. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid, and the schedule worked around my classes. The place itself was what you'd expect. Bright overhead lights, the smell of fryer oil clinging to everything, red booths lined against the walls, a sticky soda machine that never quite worked right. I shared a dorm with my roommate Ethan, who had a talent for making life miserable. He wasn't violent or anything, but he was loud, obnoxious, and always looking for ways to push my buttons. The guy would blast music at 2 a.m., eat food off my side of the mini fridge, and sometimes even go through my stuff as a joke. Because of him, I ended up spending more time at Wendy's or wandering around campus late than I should have. It felt easier to deal with grease and customers than with him. But the Wendy's job came with its own set of issues. The crew was small, usually just 3 or 4 people at night. I worked the closing shift most days, which meant clocking out around 12:30 a.m. and walking back across the quiet town to campus. Most nights were uneventful. Wipe down tables, clean fryers, sweep floors, count registers, lock up. Boring, routine stuff. Until one week in late October. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the wind carried a bite that reminded you winter wasn't far away. Inside Wendy's, though, everything was warm, greasy, and humming with fluorescent buzz. I was wiping down the counter when Sarah, one of my shift leads, called over. "Hey Tyler, after you're done with that, grab the trash from the bathrooms, okay?" "Got it," I said, dropping the rag into the sanitizer bucket. Sarah was in her late 20s, short brown hair tucked under a Wendy's visor with this no-nonsense tone that made her sound older than she was. She wasn't unfriendly, but she ran the place like she had something to prove. Working alongside us that night was Marcus, a sophomore at Eastwood like me, but older because he'd taken a gap year. Marcus was the guy you wanted on shift, laid back, funny, and somehow managed to never smell like fry oil even after 8 hours. The store was dead quiet around 9:30. The dinner rush had long passed, and the only customers coming through were late-night drive-through orders. I liked nights like this. Fewer people meant less stress. After I finished the trash, I went to mop the dining area. The parking lot outside looked almost empty except for one silver sedan parked under a flickering light. I thought nothing of it. Students sometimes parked there while grabbing food before heading back to campus. At around 10 p.m., a man walked in. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, and thin, the kind of thin where his clothes seemed too big for his frame. He wore a dark hoodie with the hood pulled tight, and the strings dangled unevenly. His jeans looked old, frayed at the bottom, and his sneakers squeaked faintly on the tile as he stepped in. "Welcome to Wendy's," I said automatically, my voice carrying more enthusiasm than I felt. He didn't respond. He just looked around the dining room, slow, deliberate, before finally stepping up to the counter. His eyes were pale, gray-blue maybe, and they didn't blink much. "I'll take a small chili," he said. His voice was low, almost scratchy. Anything else? I asked. He shook his head. I punched it into the register. That'll be $2.19. He slid exact change across the counter, coins stacked neatly, a dime resting perfectly on top. As I handed him the chili cup a few minutes later, he said something strange. You work here a lot, don't you? I froze just for a second. Yeah, most nights. He gave me this thin smile, then turned and walked to a booth in the far corner where he sat facing the counter but in the shadows, his hood still up. I brushed it off at first. Customers sometimes remembered me. It wasn't weird to be recognized when you worked the same shift every day. But what unsettled me was how he didn't touch the chili. He just sat there, watching. By 11:15, Marcus leaned against the soda machine, whispering so only I could hear. Dude, is that guy ever gonna eat? I glanced over. The man was still there, hunched forward slightly, hands on the table, eyes on me. Maybe he's waiting for someone, I whispered back. Marcus frowned. At Wendy's? At 11 at night? Nah, man, he's off. Sarah cut in from the back. What are you two whispering about? Nothing, Marcus said quickly, shooting me a look that said, drop it. When the man finally stood up, my relief was short-lived. He carried the chili cup with him, but tossed it, still sealed, in the trash on his way out. The door chimed, the wind howled in, and then he was gone. Marcus muttered, yeah, that's not creepy at all. We finished cleaning up, and by midnight, Sarah locked the doors. Marcus left first. He drove and offered me a ride, but I told him I wanted the walk. Normally, I liked the quiet of those walks, the way the air felt cleaner at night. But that night, when I stepped into the parking lot, the silver sedan was still there. Its engine wasn't running and no lights were on. My heart picked up, but I told myself maybe it belonged to an employee from another store in the plaza. I didn't linger. I walked fast, cutting through the lot and back toward campus. When I reached the corner by the gas station, I turned back once. The sedan was still there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone inside was watching. The next night, Friday, I worked again. The shift was busier. Football game nights always meant a swarm of students afterward. By 10:30, the place finally thinned out, and I was wiping trays near the trash bins when the door chimed. It was him, the same man, same hoodie, same sneakers, same way of moving, slow, deliberate, like each step mattered. This time, Marcus nudged me with his elbow and whispered, Bro, your friend's back. I forced a smile and greeted him. Welcome to Wendy's. He stared at me for a beat too long before ordering a small Frosty. Again, exact change. Again, he sat in the corner. This time, though, when the dining room cleared, he spoke up. His voice carried across the near-empty restaurant. You don't like your roommate, do you? The words hit me like ice water. What? I said, my voice cracking. He tilted his head. The loud one. Ethan. I felt my stomach drop. How could he possibly know Ethan's name? Marcus glanced between us, clearly sensing something was off. Ty, you know this guy? No, I said quickly, too quickly. The man smiled faintly. I've seen you. Walking home, studying late, I noticed things. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to get away from him. Sarah, oblivious in the back, shouted, Table's done yet? I nodded at Marcus, who muttered, Hell no, man. This is weird. This is too weird. When the man finally left, he didn't throw away the Frosty. He just walked out with it, slow steps echoing until the door chimed shut. Marcus exhaled. Dude, I don't care what Sarah says. Next time I'm calling the cops. 3 days later, I had a rare night off. I got back to the dorm around 5 p.m., exhausted from classes, and found Ethan sprawled on his bed playing some loud video game. Yo, he said without looking up. Some guy came by for you earlier. My heart skipped. What guy? Ethan shrugged. Tall, skinny, hoodie. Asked if you were here. When I said no, he just walked off. I froze in the doorway. Did he say his name? Nope. Didn't leave a message either. Creepy bastard just left. For once, Ethan wasn't joking. His tone had a rare edge of unease. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the hallway made me jolt upright. I kept picturing the man standing outside our door, pale eyes peering through the crack, waiting. I avoided late shifts for a week, trading with Marcus when I could, but the fear followed me everywhere, walking across campus, eating in the dining hall, even sitting in lectures. I felt eyes on me constantly. Then came the night that cemented everything. It was a Wednesday, close to midnight. Sarah had left early sick, so it was just Marcus and me finishing up. I was mopping near the counter when Marcus whispered sharply, "Ty." Look, I turned. The man was outside, standing under the flickering parking lot light. Not in a car this time, just standing, facing the glass. His hood was down for the first time, revealing sharp cheekbones, pale skin stretched tight, and thinning blonde hair slicked back. His eyes were fixed on me. Marcus muttered, "I'm not kidding, I'm calling the cops." I nodded, throat dry. Marcus grabbed his phone, but when we looked back, the man was gone. We locked the doors, turned off the lights, and waited inside until a police cruiser pulled up. The officers searched the lot, but found nothing. One of them told us, "Probably some drifter." Still, be careful walking home, but I knew better. This wasn't random. He knew me. He wanted me. I quit Wendy's a week later. I told Sarah I couldn't handle the late nights with classes. She didn't press. But the story doesn't end neatly. 2 weeks later, walking back from the library one evening, I passed the Fairfield Road Wendy's. It was dark, closed for the night.